Welcome to Product Mastery Now, where we simplify the 7 knowledge areas for product mastery. These are the product management practices that help you elevate your influence and also create those products that customers will love. You can find out more about all 7 areas at the website productmasterynow.com. I'm 𝐬𝐮 𝐬𝐝, a product management professor, practitioner, and your host. Now, today we're talking about what do you do when that person comes and asks you, what is it like to move into a product management role and how can I do that? Or maybe how to move up to the next level of role. I've heard lots of responses for that question, and most of them are focused on skills needed, which are certainly important, but I like to start somewhere else. That relies on really the person's existing experience. It helps them to feel less anxiety and to leverage their strengths they have already. By the end of this discussion, you'll know how to also better help people that ask you that question, how to move into a product management role, or if you're listening because you want to make that move yourself, or even if you're in a role now that you're trying to move up into that next product-related role, I think you'll find this very helpful. Joining us is Mary Baird, who successfully went from a role in a nonprofit organization that was focused on event management to a product management-related role for a product family with a global customer base, nearly doubling her salary at the time. That got my attention. Since then, her roles have evolved, and today she is the Director of Customer Operations at 𝐬𝐻, a Veralto company. And once again, we do provide a written article of everything we talk about. You'll find that article at productmasterynow.com/495. Mary, I'm so glad we finally got this interview put together. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So there's some good history here about how this came about, and we'll talk about some details of that. But let's share kind of the starting point of the story, which is before you moved into this, and I should be clear, this wasn't a product management role by title, but as I looked at the description to help you with this several years ago, it had lots of product management role capabilities, right? And you were able to make this move. And I suspect at the time it felt like a bit of a leap. Let's talk about what you were doing at the time in this nonprofit organization.
Sure. So outside of a year in financial reporting right out of university, I spent 10 years in various roles in nonprofit leadership. So most of those roles had a high responsibility for donor development, resource development. Immediately prior to joining 𝐻𝐻, a Danaher company, I was the resource development director and also a campaign director for another nonprofit here in Northern Colorado. So working with community leaders, understanding our community impact and collective impact strategy. So a lot of fundraising and program expertise and program management. And how do we scale and expand over time to meet community needs? Over the course of those 10 years, though, I think a nonprofit organization is similar to a startup. So it's running fast, wearing a lot of hats. So you're doing everything from unlocking buildings and facility management to working the books, your CPAs, running board meetings, marketing. I was doing website design, website coding. You wear a lot of hats, and I think it prepares you for multiple skill sets into these commercial general management roles.
Absolutely. I like those roles that you get to wear lots of hats. That's how my career started out, as the 4th employee in the small company. And you do a little bit of everything, right? Including washing the dishes at the end of the day if there's dishes left in the sink, whether they're yours or not. So fundamentally, fundraising going on here, meeting needs of the community. How did this role come up that involved product management? How did you find out about this?
So I think one of the biggest compliments we can receive in our careers is when someone asks you to consider joining their team. So it was similar in that way. We had a board of directors member that worked for 𝐻𝐻 at the time and said, hey, if you're ever interested in joining a for-profit, large, publicly traded global company, let's have a conversation and talk and explore that. And so I did. I was quick to be interested. That's how that conversation initially started.
Okay, so someone that you knew through your existing role, they must have recognized the good work that you were doing already and just the very capable person that you are, and saw, hey, there's potential here for you to help us too, which is great, right, to be reached out that way. You, in this case, weren't looking to make that shift offhand, but found the possible opportunity. I suspect, and since I was involved with this a little bit with you at the time, you've been someone who I've known pretty much since birth. So that's the relationship here of known you for a very long time. And listeners, I don't normally do this help of helping people find their position in product management, but this was a special situation. And one that I get asked this question a lot, so one that I wanted to talk to, and Mary's a great example of kind of a way to do this. When you were first thinking about this then, walk through what you're thinking about, maybe some of the emotions involved.
It was exciting on one hand, and in other parts it was really daunting, and kind of questioning some confidence of being really confident in the 501c3 space and feeling like a subject matter expert, really skilled and developed, have a lot of connections, a strong network, proven results. But then it's a bit of a starting over. It would be a brand new industry, new people, new products, solutions, new language, terminology. So it was daunting for sure. And I think you go through some of those phases of the change curve and kind of questioning, can I do this? Is this experience going to translate? Is it going to transfer? Can I regain the confidence I have in this other industry into something new?
Yeah, and those are the key things I want to dig into more about the dauntiness of that and if your experience would transfer or not. Because you had really good experience, the way I looked at it, but that wasn't maybe particularly obvious to you at that point, how that experience might relate. And there were three specific things that I asked you to do, which I really think about as reframing what you have been doing into what this new role is looking for, right? And this is the advice I give people whenever they ask this question about, hey, there's this role I'm interested in, it's product management or product related, what should I do? Well, let's start with what you have been doing. And like you said, you have proven successes, right? There's lots of good accomplishments there. How do those accomplishments relate? How can we maybe frame those properly? So the three things I asked you to do was to listen to a few specific episodes of this podcast that I identified. I had read the job description and then told you, I think I gave you like 6 episodes to listen to, with the intent being that they will help you understand the language. Like you said, part of this is just learning the language related to this new role and company. They'll help you understand the language that you'll need to know. And for anyone that ever wants to do that, there's a search at the bottom of the podcast window at productmasterynow.com. You just click on podcast. At the very bottom is a search, and you can search for any kind of topic you want. So that was a simple thing. Listen to those. And then to identify how your existing experience applied to the descriptions, the job description itself. And then we got together for a couple hours to do a mock interview session, which turned out being really funny, what we might talk about. So let's go through each one of these. First, how did hearing the language of product professionals, product management, of innovation through the podcast, how did that help you in thinking about this new role?
Listening to the podcast and doing my own searching, helping identify those pieces of the business that are framed in different terminology, different contexts. One example of that was there was a podcast on the 3 horizons. And that was a new concept or new terminology. But then when I started to unpack that, thinking in the work that I had done with community leaders and fundraising and marketing for capital campaigns, capacity campaigns, in many ways, we're thinking 3, 5, 10 years out, and the impact, the resources that are needed, how you acquire those over time, the value to donors, the value to the community. So it was interesting. You can start to make those connections quickly, but initially it's a lot to learn and taking kind of that one piece at a time.
Yeah, really good. This is such an important element because when you get into that interview environment for the new role, people are going to ask you questions about how has your experience prepared you for this role? And they'll be much more specific than that. But that's the kind of the big picture is make connections between how your experience demonstrates that you're the right candidate for this. And in the case of someone moving into product management for the first time, the language is very different, right? The terminology is different. You're going to be asked about the experience in a way that looks through the lens of product and not whatever it may have been in the past. But every single person I've ever talked to that's interested in a product role has good experience to connect. They just need to think about how to reframe that. And I like that you said, so listening to those episodes help. And then you did some of your own research to dig deeper too, to understand some of the concepts, right? Some of the terms that come up a little bit more and connected back to your experience and how you can then talk about that in a way that feels much more comfortable and natural because, oh yeah, we didn't call it 3 horizons, but this is what I did, right? And you can then explain things in those terms. So that's really good. Okay. Anything else about just listening to the podcast help you?
It's a good, I think, idea generator and place to start. And usually when you're looking at a role, a lot of roles are multifaceted. And so something that I did, I had a good understanding of who was on my interview panel, and that was communicated in advance. And for this specific role, I interviewed with 7 different people across the commercial business. So product management, open innovation, strategic marketing, sales, service. And so I was able to kind of find different pieces connected to product management or strategic marketing and those elements and have an understanding of what questions are they going to be asking in what context and helping identify examples of my work and package it and translate it into those examples for their specific area of marketing or sales or open innovation.
That was some good homework you did, right? So first, great tip, ask who will be interviewing me. If you can't get specific names, to look up their profiles, at least what roles are they in, what departments, what functions do they come from? Because then you can think through further how your experience might relate to their role and how they might be thinking about you for this position, right? Because this was, like all product roles, a very cross-functional position that would be related to all those functions that were interviewing you, right? That's why they were part of the process.
Yeah, it was a role that was very unique in that it was highly cross-functional, and you are leading through influence, so indirect, but you're managing at any given time a group of 25 key stakeholders that your work really is intertwined in success with.
Okay, yes, and influence is that key thing that we need to be able to demonstrate that we have and can apply as well. Okay, so the second thing that I asked you to do was to think more directly about this reframing your experience. And you gave one example already, the 3 horizons type thing. Like, okay, I didn't know that was a framework that existed, but I do now, and this is how I've worked on that. I don't know if you have any more examples you could share with us that came up for you, or just in general, how you thought about reframing what I had done in the nonprofit world, really fundraising primarily and creating events for fundraising, how that might apply to this role that was very product-centric.
I think some key attributes or capabilities that I wanted to communicate and showcase through the interview process were around my work ethic, my capabilities, communication, my value and emphasis on collaboration, teamwork, being able to lead directly, lead indirectly through influence. And so identifying examples connected to that, kind of understanding my strengths and opportunities for growth and development, I think was key, and also incorporating it into the examples that I would translate into these new contexts. But if you really zoom back, and even in my day-to-day work now, there's a high emphasis on process improvement, continuous improvement, strategic growth, commercial initiatives. We would maybe not say a commercial initiative, we'd say a program initiative or a community impact initiative, but how is that designed? There's probably a process for that. It's probably similar in many business settings. So understanding those pieces. In complex problem solving, where have I had success in problem solving? What was the process for that? Again, it's similar to other best-in-class methods for problem solving. So once you're able to kind of connect those dots and identify those examples that have been highly impactful in our different roles across our career, I was able to build confidence even during the interview or interview process to kind of make those correlations, make those connections to say, I can do this and I can convey that.
Right. What I like so much is that you did an inventory of your skills, things that you had that reflect your accomplishments that you had already. So here's the areas that I know that I have some abilities in, that I feel some capabilities and competencies in, and how do those relate to what this new role is? And just start connecting those dots better. And this helps to just deepen that reframing. Like, I've done these things in the nonprofit world, and now I'm thinking about this role over here that's very product centric, and how can I make some connections there, right? And I'm trying. This has been a bit of time now, but I'm trying to reflect on some specific conversations. But it seems like one of the initial things that might have come up is just this thought of like, what do I know about product? I've been in this very service environment for such a long time. We don't make a physical thing. We provide services. And just that notion of like, oh, a service, I do some things that can be thought of as a product. The service just happens to be an intangible form of that. Any reflections on that?
Absolutely. I think that is a really interesting thing for 501c3s, and there's been big advancements in that space, and I think other industries too, of seeing their solution and what they have to offer as a product, as a solution. But again, the language and terminology, or how that's structured, designed, or incorporated into your marketing strategies or your resource development or sales strategies, it's not as direct, but it's there. And so there are examples that I have identified or did identify that help make those connections. And that made it easier for me to talk about.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, is making those connections and just rethinking how your experience relates. And that question comes up a fair bit for me, just this notion of a product versus service. And when I talk about the 7 knowledge areas for product mastery, people sometimes will say, well, you're focused on products. I'm really all involved in services. Hold on. It's a service is just an intangible product. You're still creating value for a customer and trying to help them solve a problem through that. And so much of everything we're talking about in my mind is just reframing experience that you have, that someone has, and then how does that apply to the new position. And I remember another great conversation I had with an individual who wanted to get into product management, and we started talking about what that might look like a little bit. And the early question certainly is, well, what are you doing now? And it turned out this person was a product marketer, which really can be described as a product manager in a marketing role. They're carrying the product forward after launched and managing it throughout its competitive life cycle. And sometimes we just get stuck on the language and the titles. And there's so many people that are doing product management work. They don't have that specific title, right? But they're already doing the work of product manager. In my case, I was a software project manager for 10 years, leading the development of software products, right? And I didn't know there was a product management term even existing at the time. So, okay, on to the third thing we did, just a couple hours of mock interviews together. Anything that stand out from that? Anything that was helpful that you recall?
Yeah, I think practicing those conversations to where there's a natural follow-up. Well, tell me a little bit more about that. And, how that example then kind of goes into another example and the conversation flows. That was great practice for me to do, again, in new language, kind of in a new industry, understanding new aspects of the work or job description that I was making those connections to. So it was really helpful to get some practice and to gain some confidence and comfortability around that. And at the end of a couple hours, for that to feel relatively natural. I think that was a big element into my preparation.
Mm-hmm. Very good. And in your case, the key product that I recall standing out was, I think you had recently done a large fundraising event. Like, well, that event is a product, right? Let's map out all the work that went into leading up to that event, right? And then let's think about, well, how does that relate to a product development process, right? And we put the work into those categories of, oh, you actually did the work of developing a product. That, in this case, it was just called a event, right? And you launched it, and it was a success, and it was all good. So
yeah, again, you have your toll gates, you have your sign-offs, you have your budget and changes and design elements. It's really it's the same core elements that can be translated across both.
Yep, very good. Okay. So this was not a simple interview process you went through. As you said, there were 7 people on the panel. You were one of the few outside candidates considered. There were several inside candidates, so I think that was probably the going-in preference at the time. What stands out from the actual interview journey for you? Any highlights?
A few. So I would say one common theme across all, and this was another podcast I recently heard, was something around the concept of drop perfectionism to increase your authentic connection. Mm-hmm. And so I think being able to show up as your authentic self and to showcase your strengths and to make that connection with each of the people on your panel or on your interview, I think that's key and it's helpful. One interview, and it was the last interview, is something that I reflect on now, and it was something that I was not necessarily prepared for, although I think that there were elements in the mock interview that certainly helped and helped me think quickly on my feet, but it was our VP of marketing at the time, who then transitioned into multiple different president and CEO roles now in his career. So it was done really well. And I was told going into it, it's the last interview, it's the 7th interview. This one will be high level of support, very conversational, just a good meet and greet discussion. And it was the most intense interview, actually, of all 7. So I had a quick switch, I think, in my mindset after I realized the level of questions that I was being asked and the direction of the conversation. And so coming from the VP of marketing, the question that I was not expecting was, all right, I see all this great high impact experience through your leadership roles at 501c3s and nonprofit organizations. Walk me through your experience and ability in sales and being effective in sales. And I said, in the nonprofit setting, I've been responsible for fundraising upwards in an annual year of $4 million. I've had roles where I've fundraised my salary, been responsible for fundraising at large, and there's a direct level of responsibility there for your staff and for the community that you serve, your clients, your programs. And that fundraising, I am selling a product that you cannot touch. You can't hold it, you can't take it home. And in my opinion, it's one of the hardest things to sell. And that walked through kind of an approach of being able to be successful in fundraising and how that translates into sales and the correlations and the confidence gained in my effectiveness as essentially a salesperson, a sales leader. Again, we ran funnel management. Did we call it funnel management? No. But walked through what that looked like as well.
And so what happened?
I got an offer. It went well. And I think that there was a little bit of a wow moment of, yeah, you are selling something that requiring a different level of commitment from who you are selling to, that they are believing in your product so much so that it's not something that they're taking home with them, but it's a tough sell.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm sure there was, I would think, some reaction like, well, if you can sell the invisible to something, then you might do okay around here too. Interesting question. Like you said, I don't know if I would expect a VP of marketing to ask about that as much as like the VP of sales directly. But your preparation prepared you to be able to kind of pivot in that moment, how you might be thinking about questions you would get asked. And again, connect back to your experience, right? And reframe your experience in terms that make sense for the organization. Okay, so much of this that we've talked about, this reframing, is just understanding the language and the concepts of the new position, and then how your existing experience and capabilities map into that and seeing those relationships there. So that's really great. I appreciate you taking time. I know it's been a while since this actually happened, but it's been on my mind to think about, because I do not offer the service of helping people get into product management. I help product managers prepare for their next career level. but this question comes up enough times that I wanted to make sure we had an episode to be able to address it, and your journey has been reflective of that really well. As listeners know, I like innovation quotes around here. I asked you to bring one as well. What do you have to share with us?
So I have one. Try not to become a man or woman of success, but rather become a man or woman of value. So Albert Einstein, pretty wise fellow. And I think that has served me well in life of really striving towards and prioritizing my time around where can I add value? How can I be of value? How can I be of service, make an impact again? And that goes back into work ethic and commitment. And I think success follows that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I know the work ethic and commitment is there, and your collaboration capabilities to get people moving in the same direction have been another key strength for you. Thank you for the quote as well. For people that want, I suspect people might just enjoy kind of seeing your journey a little bit, how the dots connected it to say. How can people just find out more about the work that you're doing?
Sure. I'm on LinkedIn, Mary Baird. Would be happy to connect and answer questions, have a conversation, support in any way I can.
Okay, fantastic. And I will put that in our article as well, that link to make that easy. And Mary, thank you so much for your time and sharing that story with us.
Thank you, Chad, and thank you for the years of support and mentoring and coaching. It's been invaluable and effective.
Oh, my pleasure, for sure. And listeners, thank you for being part of this podcast. And Mary was able to change that trajectory of her career in part by listening to some episodes of this podcast, which I'm glad that you do as well. To more quickly prepare for the next level of your career in product management, I provide training programs for product managers, leaders, and executives. And there's 3 of those then. How to become a more effective product manager, moving into leading innovation, and then for senior leaders, what they need to know to support product innovation. And no doubt one of them is ideal for you to help you move to that next level of your career. Go to productmasterynow.com to get ready for that next step. And having the career that you want, it doesn't take luck. It really takes preparation for when that opportunity is right. And now is always the time to prepare. So get ready now. Once again, thank you for listening. If you want to find the article related to everything we talked about, go to productmasterynow.com/495. Everyone, keep innovating.
Thank you for listening to Product Mastery Now, where product leaders and managers gain product mastery through practical knowledge, influence, and confidence. By listening, you are becoming a product master, creating products customers love. Find additional resources at productmasterynow.com. Keep innovating.